And we were going to caravan with them. We were going to go to New Orleans. And unfortunately, we got on I-10 going through Florida. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, boom, they lost a tire on I-10 in Florida, which is a really busy interstate. Lots going on.
Hi, you've reached the Caldwells. Please leave a message and we will get back with you just as soon.
Welcome to the RV Work-Life Balance Podcast with your traveling nomadic hosts, Sherry and Russ Caldwell.
Hey, that's us. We're living the dream, working from home, baby.
No matter where home is.
And you can too. Cheers.
Cheers. Well, welcome back to the podcast. And I'm here with the lovely Sherry. I'm Russ. And we're here to chat about the topic today. What's the topic today?
Well, today we are safe in California. And the topic for today is breakdowns.
And that's not kind of like a mental breakdown. Yeah, that's although that does happen when you have a mechanical breakdown. But yeah, it's breakdowns, which if you're trying to live and work and travel, there's gonna be something that goes wrong. And
always something.
What we always hear, anyone that travels a lot, there's the constant phrase they say. What is it? That's a hurricane.
It's like driving earthquake.
Yeah, it's your rig is like going through an earthquake.
Undergoing an earthquake.
Yeah, at all times. And some people
traveling
have
down the road.
More clever where they'll combine it with a tornado, blah, blah, blah. Which means basically everything is shaking. So you can't be surprised if something breaks.
Shit breaks.
So yeah, so today is about breakdowns because it's going to happen. It is not if it happens, it's a when.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, and we've been doing this for a couple of years now on the road. So we've experienced other people's breakdowns and our own, and we started to see a pattern of that. And we thought this would be a good topic for us to talk through.
So what is our first breakdown experience?
So I'm going to tee you up for this because I think the best one was we got caught off guard when we were hanging out with Scott and Kelly. So
when we first started out.
That's right.
And we were going to caravan with them. We were going to go to New Orleans. And unfortunately, we got on I-10 going through Florida. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, boom, they lost a tire on I-10 in Florida, which is a really busy freeway, busy interstate. Lots going on. So they pulled over and we pulled over and there we were with a flat tire.
They were with a flat tire. That's right. So their rig, so we've probably mentioned this before. We drive a Class A diesel pusher and we tow our Jeep behind it. Scott and Kelly, they had a truck and fifth wheel. And the tire that blew out was on the fifth wheel. And at that point in time, we were following them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we saw the problem.
And we were on radios.
That's right.
Cell phones,
which we highly recommend.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, they had a blowout, which is scary, whether you're in a car or you're in an RV. It's always bad. And so they pulled off. So what were some of the problems we had? Because I-10, like you said, is super busy.
Super busy. Fortunately, we had the safety cones.
That's right. I'm a nerd, and I like to have all the right safety stuff. So I bought the collapsible, humongous orange cones, and I was so excited to get those babies out. So I busted those out and set them up. But, there was so many big trucks going by.
Ultimately, it was a really dangerous
Super
situation.
Dangerous, yeah.
And they had called their road service,
which was
Roadside Assistance.
They had an RV AAA
on
AAA,
yeah. RV. And that was a whole different story in that they just didn't show up.
Yeah.
And then they kept checking and somehow the call had gotten canceled. And as we've learned on the road, breakdowns on the weekend are really difficult. So anyway, we waited. Ultimately, Russ and I drove to the next rest area, and then Russ drove back in the Jeep to help. And the cool thing about this incident was that it was in Florida.
Right.
And many states have a roadside emergency assistance through the Department of Transportation. In Florida, it is an excellent roadside assistance service called Road Ranger, the Florida Road Ranger. And so you just, Google that and call them. And when we finally remembered that, and fortunately, we were not across the line, right?
Right.
The Florida Road Rangers came out. And I wasn't there. You were there, yeah?
Yeah, we had to drive our rig down to the next rest area so that we'd be out of harm's way. We didn't want all that equipment out there, and I drove back in the Jeep. But this is a longer story to simply tell, and it turns out it was related to, of course, tires, as we pointed out. And if you do any research about RV travel, it turns out tires is one of the biggest culprits you're going to have to deal with. The tire problem that you have to worry about is in most RVs, there's a phrase, it ages out before it wears out, meaning that in most people, when they're driving their car, their tires will wear out and they'll get, not bald, but they'll get worn down to the point that you got to get new tires. But in RVs, because they don't travel the same amount of distance as someone driving to work, the tires will actually not wear down very much at all, but they will age on the tread. That's right. They'll look brand new on the tread. But the problem is the rubber breaks down over time, especially if they're baked in the sun and they're not being protected. And that's what was happening as these tires had actually gone past their age. There's a date on the tires. And this problem isn't exclusive to fifth wheels. It's on any kind of RV. So at that point, it was an interesting problem. We basically had the Road Ranger put the spare tire on, and they were able to drive down to the rest area. And then they called a company to come out and change all the tires.
Yeah, that was
right
awesome.
There at the rest area,
yeah,
which is amazing. But that problem is common, very common. And at that point, we went on to our next destination, but it caused Sherry and I to change some of our priorities by the time we got back.
We had replaced the front tires of our Class A of Charlie. We'd replaced the front tires before we left Washington State on our big adventure. And we had planned to change out the 4 rear tires. But we knew we had a little bit of time. But after that incident, we went back to our place in Florida and we got those tires changed. That was scary. It was really scary.
Yeah. So that was like a good example of something we started to really pay attention to. You don't like to spend too much money, that you don't have to. But when it comes to safety, it needs to be prioritized.
And the fact that Florida Road Ranger service was such a lifesaver in that.
That was awesome
incident.
Because we ended up being stuck because we didn't have the right tool in the RV to take the cap off the hub so we can basically change the tire.
And the roadside assistance never showed up.
That's a whole other drama story. Yes, is like, insurance and getting support for roadside assistance is a challenge unto itself.
Yep.
So anyways, it was a good example, but tires is a major problem for anyone on the road. And that was basically an experience that really kind of made our determination of what was important. It's something we track. We monitor our tires all the time because of that. And, it was a big deal.
Yeah. Yep. And then our next breakdown experience was, again, traveling with friends. We were in a caravan going from San Diego to an event in Tucson, Arizona.
Right.
And we were traveling with a number of Class A motorhomes going from one event to the next to an FMCA rally in Tucson. And a friend of ours in a brand new Class A motorhome.
Mm-hmm. Don.
Don. We passed him on the side of the road.
He had left a little before us, so we were shocked when we saw him on the side of the road.
And he had texted and said, hey, I'm on the side of the road. And it was a belt, right?
That's right.
He'd broken a belt, and he had a brand new motorhome.
That's right.
But what we learned from that experience was the importance of a emergency road kit.
That's right.
That you carry these spare parts
Common
and pieces
parts.
and bits
Mm-hmm.
with you, such that if you do have a breakdown like that and you're on the side of the road, the chances of a mobile RV repair unit coming to help you and carrying whatever belt that is or filter or whatever is very small that they have that part. And this was on a Saturday?
Yeah,
maybe?
we were doing a weekend move, yeah.
It was on a Saturday. And breakdowns on the weekends are especially concerning because it's hard to find help. Ultimately, Don was able to get the belt that he needed, and then he needed the tool, the special tool.
That's
so
right.
you have to make sure that you have the parts and pieces that are common breakdown items, but then also have the tools that you need to be able to make the repair. And
Yeah.
he went on his way. But
Yeah, and Don's actually a pretty talented guy. Like he's literally a rocket
He is
scientist,
a
first
rocket
off.
scientist.
So he's wicked smart, as they say. But he was actually, given the right tools and parts, Don could do the fix. But not everybody can, including myself. I couldn't have done that fix myself. This is a big Class A diesel engine, and the change for those belts is not trivial. So, but what we do with this is we assume, imagine you're going to be in the middle of nowhere, but there's a small town mechanic there. Now, the mechanic will never have the parts for your big RV, but they may be able to make
your
the change.
specific parts.
That's very specific. So having the part is the most important thing. And so there's a set of parts that are highly likely to wear out, and you should always be prepared for those. And in fact, the manufacturer of your chassis or your engine can actually tell you what those are.
Freightliner or Spartan.
Yeah, Freightliner is ours, and so we call Freightliner, and we said, hey, what are the common parts that we need to be prepared for? And they'll walk through the different filters and belts and things like that. And it's a small kit, but it's something you should carry so that you have that peace of mind. And unfortunately, Don didn't have that. And so
Didn't have it yet.
luckily, the part wasn't too far away for him because we were just leaving a major metropolitan area. But sometimes you're in the middle of nowhere. And so he was able to get back on the road in a matter of hours. We saw him come in late to the event, but he did make it. So
Yeah. And then our next experience, again with friends that we had met, Sharon and Dennis. We happened to be parked next to them at a Harvest Host location.
Love Harvest Host.
Yeah. We were leaving Florida.
Yep.
And stayed overnight at the Tallahassee Auto Museum.
That's right.
And happened to park next to these people, Sharon and Dennis, in their Class A motorhome. And they had a bit of something going on that night, that first night.
When we pulled
helped
in
them
next to them, they
with
were
that.
working on it. And we were trying to
Yeah.
figure out what they were doing.
Yeah.
And in Harvest Host, when you park next to somebody else, you become, instant friends to ask them, where
Yeah.
they're from and everything. And we saw they were working on their rig. And so, of course, we went over to
With
meet
drinks.
them and then exactly. And then go see if we could help, right? We have some tools, we have some extra parts and
It
things
was
like that.
zip ties.
Yeah, zip ties and duct tape.
We
you
gave
know,
them our
so
zip ties
We gave them
and
stuff.
duct tape. That's right.
So,
It's
but
some jack issue, right?
that's right. That's right. So they were having
Not a big deal.
hydraulic fluid problem, though. So
Yeah.
they were running out to get some stuff. But at that point, they made some changes to it to get by. We hung out that night and had a great time sitting
And we
in
toured
chairs.
the museum the next day
That's
together,
right.
the next morning.
Yep.
And they actually left a little bit before us.
hmm
And then we closed everything up and took off. And we decided to stop. We pulled into the first rest area.
I got a sensor warning on my tires. This comes back to that tire story where we're kind of anal about our tires now. So we have a TPMS system that tracks all the tires. And
It's
one
a
of the
pressure.
tires was not registering correctly. And you don't want a tire problem. So we hit the very first rest area,
Stop, check it out.
pulled in, and while we were pulling up, we saw
Lo and behold,
who's standing there? Sharon, next to the rig.
Sharon. Yeah.
So
And they were stuck. They had a brake issue. The parking brake would not disengage.
That's
They
right.
were stuck. And their roadside assistance. This was on Sunday.
mhm.
And it was kind of the same deal where they had called and they were waiting, and then it was going to be a long time at the rest area, and they
Yep.
had places to go and things to do. So we had suggested that they call Freightliner. Freightliner, the chassis manufacturer, they have an excellent roadside assistance. Well, is it roadside assistance? It's a technical service. Freightliner FCC
24/7.
24/7. It's
right.
an app, and it's super helpful.
Yep.
But we had learned that Freightliner encourages our Class A diesel motorhomes on the Freightliner chassis to call Freightliner, because if you're in a situation where you have to be towed,
disaster.
It's a special process for these rigs, and it needs to be done right. And your regular tow truck driver might not have the equipment or the experience to do it right. So we suggested they call Freightliner and at least have the 24-hour technical assistance to figure out what was going on and what they might do. And that worked out well, because they ended up figuring out how to make a little jerry rig, how to fix it so that they could get to the next Freightliner service facility.
Yeah, so there's like hidden screens and stuff that'll actually diagnose, which we found out on ours too. But Freightliner or Spartan, if you're using if you have a Class A, there's a way to get into the mode to actually ask the system what the codes are, what's going on, do a diagnosis, and that's the information you give to the manufacturer. Like
they
Freightliner.
walk you through that.
They tell you how to do it, and then they'll say, "Oh, based on this, you should do this, this, and this." And sometimes it's like turn the key to this, and then push this button, and things like that. But it'll allow you to usually get to your next destination, which may be a repair site or maybe home if you're almost there, kind of thing. So yeah, they were dead in the water. You're right. They were having brake problems that were basically, it locked the brakes on the freeway and they were smoking the brakes and they pulled off. So they were going nowhere until then. So, but that was a good example where we knew that you should probably call, and it paid off for them to work through that.
Yeah, with Freightliner.
So these are like all like intros to problems we were seeing, and we'd seen other minor ones when we met people on the road, but then we experienced our own breakdown.
Yeah.
So what was that? What was the breakdown? That was recently.
Well, and that is recently. As recently as 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were leaving New Mexico, starting up the rig.
Yep.
And all of a sudden she went into as we were hooking up the Jeep, she went into a weird high idle situation. Yep. So you went up front to check that out.
Yep.
And had an engine light.
Check engine. Yeah. The dreaded, which in a car, everyone knows the check engine, right? It's the generic thing that says, hey, something's broke. But in a big rig, it's really worrisome because it's your house that's broke. It's not just, hey, I got to use the other car.
Got places to be.
Yeah, I got to move this house. So, yeah, we got the check engine light. And then we got second
light. And we have learned that the first solution is to turn it off and turn it back on again.
That's right.
And sometimes
90% of the time that fixes the problem. 10% it doesn't. But
just kind of clears it.
It's amazing.
Wakes her up or whatnot.
Yeah.
And we'd been sitting in Albuquerque, New Mexico at this great resort. We had a great time, met friends. But that's another story. But it had also been 3 days of high winds and a lot of dust blowing right up her back end.
Into the engine,
Into the engine.
So that was the unusual thing that kind of we were trying to figure out, why was this now? Because we keep really good care of our rig. We take her in for regular service. And the only thing that happened, we had 3 solid days of windstorms blowing dust into the engine. So we were like, maybe some dust got into one of the sensors. Yeah. That's the only thing, because we've been sitting idle.
She just wasn't feeling it.
That's right. So when we fired her up and she lit off this check engine, it was like, uh-oh, that's not good. And then that cleared, but there's a separate, there's another engine light that looks just like check engine, but it doesn't say check engine. And it's just the engine there. It's just an icon for the engine. It turns out that's a MIL light, M-I-L.
Malfunction indicator light.
Yes.
And it makes a difference what color it is.
That's right. Colors matter.
Yellow.
So if you're colorblind, get somebody that can check the color, because if it's red, you are in big trouble.
Yeah.
But yellow is okay. So.
Yeah.
So we had actually both lights at one point, and then the official check engine went off, and we were just with the malfunction one. So we, of course, like everyone, Googled it and tried to figure out, what does this mean?
Right.
And decided that based on the research, the MIL light, the malfunction indicator light, we could move and go forward. We knew we were going to have to get some service, but we just wanted to know how desperate this was.
Right. How far can you go?
How far can you go? And we knew we had a decent trip to make, so we headed out.
Yeah. And then I thought that the indicator light went out.
It did.
When
You're right.
we did the engine on and engine off.
That's
and
right.
turn it back
It did
on.
clear. That's right.
So it went off. So we set out, but we were really aware of what was going on and checking on her constantly. And
it was
then
the fuel after the fueling. That's
right. We decided to go ahead and make an early fuel stop. We went into a truck stop and got her all filled up with diesel. I don't think you did DEF.
No,
because we don't fill it with DEF every stop.
Stops, yeah.
But damn, as soon as we pulled out of that truck stop,
on the on-ramp to the freeway, I gunned it to get on there.
That light went off.
The check engine and the MIL light went on.
Yeah.
So we only made it to the very next exit, and we pulled off.
Pulled over on the side of the road on this exit. It was out in the middle of nowhere, so there wasn't
nothing
a lot
at the exit
going by. It was not busy or anything. But we sat there, turned it off, and turned it back on again.
That's right.
Several times.
Yeah. Like maybe it's 3 or 4 times this time.
Eventually, then we start the research, looking on Google to find out the status of these indicator lights, and also that Freightliner app.
So this is where we started to take our own advice, right? Like we had told other people, hey, you should do this. You should. So at this point, everyone had Google, of course. We've done that. But it was like, you know what? Okay, now it's time to call Freightliner. And we did. And that was extremely helpful. Now, at the same time, we had made multiple calls. We also called
CoachNet. Our Roadside Assistance.
Thank you, Roadside Assistance. And we told you, some of these other people had problems with theirs. And CoachNet has a good reputation. And, they did their best to try to help us. But I'll be honest, they quickly, decided, we're going to have to tow you.
Yeah.
That was not good.
Because we called and we talked to the first person who then refers it to the RV tech, who then called us back and reassessed our situation. The first question they always ask is, are you in a safe place? And we're like, well, we're sitting on the side of the road at this exit. And you're able to tell them what exit you're at. And so they know what the situation is. And we were safe.
Yeah.
But not the best place to be.
No, there was also another truck behind us. He was working on his rig too.
Yeah.
But we were off the main road.
Yeah.
So we
it
were
wasn't
safe.
an I-10 situation with the safety cones or anything.
In fact, we decided to have snacks there while we waited. So it was that safe.
We were doing our research and checking everything. But so in between calling CoachNet and then the tech calling back, we had called Freightliner.
That's right.
To talk about the codes, and they were able to assess and do some diagnostics and tell us more about what was likely to be happening.
This was the cool part, was I didn't know how to get to some of these menus. So he said, you're going to push this button and push. There's a little joystick on the side of our RV here about how to get to screens. And he showed me how to get to the screens where I could actually diagnose and do some cool stuff. So it brought up the codes, and it threw 2 codes that have 2 sets of numbers. And we read those numbers to him because we didn't know what it meant. And he explained that represents some sort of fuel
pressure and
it was basically struggling to get fuel, which is interesting because we had just fueled up, right? We were like, maybe we put in bad fuel or something, right? So, but we did sit there and talk him through it. It was like, hey, can we keep driving? Because we were, 1, stuck in the middle of nowhere, and 2, we were trying to decide, can we make it to our actual destination before we have to get it fixed, or do we need to change plans?
How critical is this issue?
That's right. We don't want to break our engine,
right?
But at the same time, if
always
it's not critical,
err on the side of caution.
That's right.
Absolutely.
It's our house, so we're like, don't have her catch on fire or anything bad. So
right.
But Freightliner was amazing. Like they explained, no, as long as the color of the thing is this, and because of these codes, you need to get it fixed soon, but you're fine. You can go.
And they can never guarantee anything.
No.
But and the decision was ours. But then CoachNet called, and
Yeah, they said.
it was a Saturday, I think.
Yeah.
But they were like, okay, we're going to send a tow truck out and tow you somewhere, and you're going to be out of operation, and it's blah,
For a
blah, blah,
while,
blah, blah.
yeah.
And we were like, no, I don't think so. Thanks,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do. But you're the one sitting there by the side of the road. You know your coach. You know what's going on. And obviously, if we didn't have the other data point.
That's the key. If we hadn't talked to Freightliner, it would be you and me staring at each other going, do we risk it or
I
whatever?
guess.
And we wouldn't know. But Freightliner or whoever your chassis manufacturer gives you the right data to go, okay, it's still our call, but they're telling us this, and this. We're going to make this call. And we decided that we were going to assess it as we were going. So we, Sherry
because it was safe to drive because
right.
of the color and the indications.
Sherry looked at the different places to pull off and worked out like every few miles we had a place we could pull off.
Assess.
Because if it got really bad, we're like, okay, we're going to this rest area. So
So we did decide, we declined the tow service to wherever and decided to go on just to get to a safer place in the first place.
So we started having the problems again.
Well, we were trying to decide between going to Flagstaff, Arizona, or taking the turn down toward Phoenix, Arizona, because we had reservations in Cottonwood.
That's right.
Down in the Verde Valley.
Beautiful.
So, and you know, we have the reservations. The reservations are already paid for. We know we have a safe place to go. And so you're just trying to assess, you know, what's happening and where you need to be and where you're likely to get good service. And if you do break down again, you know, how close can you get to a bigger service area? Because the Freightliner service facilities, they're all along the road, you know, and Spartan and Cummins are good emergency repair facilities. So we were going down the road. We made a crucial decision to turn on to I-17 South and go to Phoenix because that was following our direction. And if we could get to Cottonwood, we would have a bit of a respite. And, you know, the whole time we're thinking, well, where would it be easier to get towed from?
Yeah.
If it came to that. But she was running like a champ.
She was. That's an excellent point. That was part of the data that we used. We were not seeing any other gauge problems. She was not stuttering. She was not struggling uphill. Like, we used all that information to decide how serious is this. And I actually went out and I checked the engine from the outside. You know, there was no temperature issues. So we made that call. And to kind of move it forward, because a lot happened after that, was we made the call and we made it to Cottonwood ultimately, right?
The lights did come on. We turned off into a truck turnout and called Freightliner, talked to them again, talked to that same tech, and again made the decision to get to our destination. We limped in. Well, we didn't really limp in.
No,
she was doing great.
Good.
But the fear and the stress and the anxiety of watching over everything. But anyway, we did get to our resort in Cottonwood, Arizona.
Which is good because for us, we were trying to decide, do we go park at just a parking lot and try to stay somewhere strange while we figure this out? That was going to be additional stress. If we could get to our destination, we knew we were going to have basically a week to do all the research, figure out where to go, and not be just making last-minute decisions. So we made that decision, and in the end, it was the right call. But, you know, it's always a risk.
And we also knew that we could likely get an RV tech, mobile tech service to come out to us if we could make it to our campground and be where we needed to be. So we did, and we made it, and she got to rest for the week. But the first thing we did was call. We called Cummins and we called Freightliner to see when we could get in Phoenix. The first appointment that we could get was at Cummins in Phoenix Friday morning at 6 a.m.
So we basically needed to get there. And when you're working on the road, when you're living and working and traveling, the challenge is, how are you going to achieve some of these meetings, right? You're going to get to an appointment. And just like when you live in a house, right? Sometimes you got to take your car in for work, and so you'll take some time off to take your car in. Sometimes you got to go to a doctor's appointment. Sometimes you're going to, a kid event. There's always something that cuts into work. And so, that's no different for us, right? We basically had an appointment to get our vehicle, which was our house, into work. But now when we're there, the question is, we're still working. Like, we still have to work. How are we going to do that?
Yeah. So ultimately that Friday, we took the vacation day to get to Phoenix Friday. We left after work Thursday to drive down to Phoenix, which was like an hour. And then we stayed at Camp Cummins overnight.
Yeah, we had two choices. We had called both Freightliner, which we were really happy with them, and Cummins. And we essentially chose Cummins for two reasons. One, the main one was they could get us in a little bit sooner. And two, in the location we were going, they had slightly better reviews, right?
Yeah.
They weren't bad reviews for Freightliner, but they were definitely better for Cummins. So we said, like everything you buy, it's like the reviews matter.
And this was also an issue with the engine, which is a Cummins engine.
That's right. Now, Freightliner luckily has Cummins technicians as well. But yeah, you're right. When it's the engine, for sure, Cummins was the place. So we went there.
And they could get us in Friday.
That's right. So we went there. Luckily, as we pulled in, we were able to back in. And they jokingly call their parking lot Camp Cummins because if you have to camp there, they have 50 amp power and there's room for multiple rigs there.
But it's a parking lot.
It is a parking lot. It's nothing fancy.
In the industrial underbelly.
But it was quiet. So
of Phoenix.
It wasn't like it was noisy or anything. But so we did that, and it's important because we knew at that point we were hoping the next day, Friday, magic was going to happen. They were going to diagnose it, fix it, and send us on our way. That was our dream.
And that we could drive out by 5
That's
o'clock.
right.
Yeah.
And so fingers crossed, we woke up. They told us be in line. We pulled the rig up in line by 6 or 7 or something and tossed them the keys. And then we went and had a fantastic breakfast, which was awesome. And then, we got to go tour a little bit of Phoenix while they did this diagnosis.
Dutch Bros.
That's right. Dutch Bros. We got coffee, went to the park. There's a cool park.
Yeah.
So, we filled the time just like everyone else. But, we kept checking in. They would call us. We'd call them. How's it going? And the diagnosis for a big rig is challenging. They got to take apart a lot of pieces to get in there. And then they pointed out ahead of time the way their process works is they plug in the computer and they keep checking as they work their way back. So they warned us.
Diagnostics.
That's right. So to kind of move it forward.
At like $200 an hour.
Yeah, we don't want to think about that right now. It's painful. But we just wanted to, at that point we were like, the money was less important than getting back on the road because we needed to be certain places and we're working, right? We're not just retired and traveling. We have to be places. So by near the end of the day, they had given us an update. They discovered what it was. It did match the codes, which is actually kind of cool that the codes were, saying the right thing, that they had found blockage in the fuel system. So that was the good news. They figured it out and figured out where the part was. Bad news was they weren't going to get it fixed that day.
And the earliest they could get us in, well, they explained that it was going to be a 10-hour repair, about $3,000. But okay, we don't want to talk about that. But the earliest that they could get us in was Wednesday morning, and this was Friday afternoon, and we were supposed to be in California on Sunday, I think. Sunday. The diagnosis was something kind of like a little mini heart attack, where she had a blockage in all that fuel lines and fuel plates and coolants and this and that. And they needed to get in there and clear the lines and check everything. So a 10-hour repair, and the first appointment was Wednesday morning.
Yeah, a certain technician had to do the work.
Right.
He didn't come into Wednesday.
And this was Friday.
So we knew at that point we were going to be rolling in, having to deal with Monday and Tuesday. We were like, we can't camp this entire weekend.
Well, we did stay that night.
We did.
And we're like, oh, okay, maybe we can make this work. But so we stayed Friday night. And it was fine. But then we woke up Saturday morning and Russ is like, oh, we're not staying here.
Yeah. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday in a hot parking lot. This is, keep in mind, the temperatures were above 100, 102, 104.
Yeah. And we had power, but we did not have water.
Well, we only had our onboard water, so
In
there
the
was no
tank.
right. So we didn't have unlimited resources, but we could have made it. But we decided. I woke up going, we shouldn't be miserable, right? When you're on the
Right.
road, you're going to be there 4 days. We might as well enjoy this. And they said we could drive the rig, right? So they said it was okay. That was critical
Right.
too. So we did a little
It was
Googling.
a crap opportunity.
Yeah, another crap opportunity.
To
We
explore Phoenix.
We spent an hour. We found a couple of good places. During that breakfast run, we went and had breakfast. We went and checked out a couple of the locations.
Mm-hmm.
We liked one of them.
resorts, yeah.
And it was just 10 minutes away.
Yep.
And that was a good call, a really good call.
Yeah.
So
So we ended up staying at a nice resort in Phoenix for Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then we left out late or in the evening on Tuesday.
Yep. So
For
we spent the night Tuesday night at
on Camp
Cummins.
Camp Cummins, so that we'd be there first thing Wednesday morning. And it was a good decision because we ended up exploring Phoenix. We took a drive out on the Apache Trail, which is this historic road
Yeah.
out in the mountains. It was an old stagecoach route.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ghost town there, but it's kind of a Disney-fied ghost town, so we really didn't stop there.
We
We
didn't
just
stay.
drove.
Yeah.
But it was really cool.
The drive was amazing. So yeah, we took advantage of it, and that crappertunity reference is like whenever there's a chance to take something bad and make something good out of it, we try to do that. And so we really enjoyed the campground we chose to stay at. It was
nice.
wonderful. It changed our opinion because we thought we were just trapped in Phoenix, but by the end of it, we actually enjoyed Phoenix. It was great. And they did so. Moving ahead, we got the rig in there on Wednesday. It was an all-day event again, but I had to work. So I had been working Monday and Tuesday at that campground. Wednesday, we were not going to have the rig. And so this happens a lot when you're working and living on the road. You have to
What
have
do you do?
a backup plan.
Yeah.
And so we've done this before. What are some of the other things other times we had this where our rig was not available, but we were working? So
And Russ is working on Zoom conference calls
All
day long.
That's
So
right.
the internets are crucial. The, privacy and quiet is really
Relative
important.
quiet,
Yeah, relative quiet.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be private. I wear headphones and stuff, so it's okay. But yeah, we've had this before, so this wasn't the first time, so we're getting pretty good at this. But we asked them, do you have a little office space?
Well, and in the past, to answer your question, Russ has worked in the rig during service. When
Yep.
we had those tires replaced, they came out and did the service while he was
Lifted
working?
the rig up, changed tires. I was on Zoom inside the whole time.
No
Never
problem.
noticed. It was great.
You have worked in a customer service lounge. A
Yeah.
lot of the truck repair facilities and NIRVC, they have customer lounges where you can go and wait. That can be a problem when he's trying to be on Zoom because he's really
I
loud.
am loud. You wouldn't tell from this, though. I'm really quiet here.
So fortunately at Cummins, and then the other option the other last resort
Mhm.
would be we might have to rent a hotel room
Yeah.
so that we would have the quiet and the privacy that he could be on the Zoom.
And we kind of did that once. We went to a wedding while we dropped our rig off at NIRVC and for a few days, and we had an Airbnb, and I worked out of that. It was no problem. But that's just like having a house at that point. But most the interesting ones is when you're using the shared office space or the break room of one of these facilities.
And some service facilities have better
Yeah.
places to work
Yeah.
than others. Oh yeah, we did it at Brazel's first for the surface.
That's right. And so, a big part of what we do is because we work online, we'll cover this in another podcast, but how we handle internet. So being able to bring our own one or more different internet feeds in there was not a big problem. But, sometimes like this time at Cummins, we were in the middle of this cement and metal building, which did not have very reliable connectivity outside. But we made it work, but it was sketchy at best. But I survived through that. I stayed through all the calls. And the key for me is as long as I can do my job and my customers and the people I work with have no idea because I'm able to get through the work where there's
It doesn't affect
it
your
doesn't
job.
affect my job, then I'm good. And I work really hard to make sure that that's always the case. And so having services available like our room or business thing
A
is really
glassed-in
important.
business facility they did at Cummins.
Yeah, there was
where you
once
could work.
I tried to do it in the car once, and that was a disaster. So working in our car was not good. But all the other times when you could just find a safe
corner,
it's all good. So.
And generally, the service facilities and the people there are super helpful on working with you, especially when you're full time on the road. They have been, in our experience, great and very flexible. But renting a hotel room is always an option, and we have had friends that have rented or stayed in a hotel for a couple of weeks in certain situations, depending on the
complexity of the repair.
Yeah,
and so this kind of starts to wrap it all up in the sense of like, you have to have things you've thought through in advance. You got it. For one, don't be surprised. It's going to happen, so you'll deal with it. 2, if you can carry parts and be, ready for the most common things, great. 3, know the kind of resources you can call, like for your manufacturer, and call them first, right? They'll walk you through the diagnosis, and sometimes it's a reset that they can help you do, kind of thing. And 4, when you go in to do the repairs, 1, be prepared. It's going to take you longer. It's going to cost you more. I mean, hopefully I'm wrong, but it's usually that. Think through the plan of how, if you're still working like we are on the road, how are you going to get this done, and roll with it, right? It's okay, because there's these challenges, but Sherry and I talk about it all the time. It's there, when your house breaks down, you got to drop it off. But we're still living this life though, so it's still okay, right? I'll still take this over sticks and bricks.
There's always a sense too of, oh my God, it can always be worse. And what we experienced in Phoenix with the engine trouble, and it cost a couple $1,000s. Yeah, but if you're living in a house, you have to worry about your roof and your air conditioner. It's the same thing on the road. So you just kind of have to budget a little for those kind of expenses and roll with it and be flexible.
That's right. But the funny thing is most people, when you move into the life on the road, you've already made changes where things are flexible, right? You have portable laptops, everything's smaller, you have multiple redundancies on things. And if you've done that right, when something happens, you take advantage of the fact that you're set up this way. Because if you were at home and you had your desktop computer and you were working on a landline only, there's no easy way to change that, right? So living on the road, you've already had to solve some of these problems. Just think it through, not worst case scenario, but think it through. When something happens, here's the priority triage steps I'm going to go through. I'm going to diagnose it. I'm going to carry the right parts. And if I have to go work somewhere else, here's how I'm going to do it. And we've had to do it multiple times. So we don't love to do it, but it actually gives you a confidence. It's a big confidence builder. Once you've done it the first time, you're like, hey, we're able to do that.
And we always say, we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah. So that was kind of the main topic for today, was breakdowns. But hopefully, we've gotten better at being able to diagnose it and deal with it. But that's come from time. The first time it happens, you freak out. The second time, you're like, okay. The third time, you're like, okay, we got this. We got this. The number one thing is what Sherry said, is like, it's going to come down to how much it's going to cost, which is why we try to preemptively spend money on regular maintenance and keeping tires and certain things that can go wrong. You don't want to let those go too far, because you'll end up paying a lot more if you don't. So that's
tire safety and the basics.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think we did a good job of wrapping this up. Is there anything else that you think we need to cover?
Well, we did make it to California, and it is fabulous.
Happy ending to the story.
That's another story.
That's right. So anyways, thanks for listening. And if you haven't subscribed, please go and do that now. We're excited to actually tell lots of different stories about how you can live, work, and travel on the road. This was just one area that we found was really important, and we thought we've actually had to tell it over campfires before. We figured it would be good to share here.
1, 2, 3. Bye.
Bye.